The rain fell hard through the jungle canopy, turning the narrow trail into thick mud. Japanese soldiers moved quietly between the trees, confident the Americans ahead were weak, tired, and badly led. They'd been right before. Tonight would be different. The shooting started sharp and close. Men began dropping in the dark. 6 days later, 87 of them would be dead. And the man responsible wasn't a seasoned officer or a battle-hardened veteran. He was a skinny American kid with a baby face who'd been told more than once to go home because boys didn't belong in the Pacific Theater. Officers laughed when they saw his enlistment papers. "You look 16, maybe younger. Go home, kid. This isn't a place for children." He didn't leave. And 6 days later, Japanese commanders would order an entire corridor abandoned because too many of their men were dying and no one could explain how. This is the story of the teenager they said was too young to fight. And the 6 days in the jungle when he proved that age doesn't matter when you refuse to quit. Before we dive into how a teenager held a jungle corridor against impossible odds, if you want more incredible World War II stories about the soldiers who changed everything, despite being underestimated, hit that subscribe button right now. We uncover the most intense, untold moments of the war every single week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The Pacific War, 1943. Early 1943, the war in the Pacific had turned brutal and personal, island by island. Jungle by jungle, every advance paid for in blood and heat and exhaustion that never ended. The Japanese believed they still held the edge in jungle combat, and they had good reason to believe it. They'd trained for this kind of fighting their entire military lives. They moved fast, struck at night, and vanished before sunrise, leaving American units shaken, confused, and angry. The jungle wasn't just terrain to them. It was home field advantage. They knew how to use every shadow, every sound, every moment of darkness to their benefit. They understood the rhythm of the jungle, the way vegetation moved, the sounds that meant danger, the silence that meant death. Most American soldiers were older, larger, and slower. They'd been trained in conventional warfare on open battlefields, France, North Africa, places where you could see the enemy coming. Not in the suffocating heat and endless vegetation of the South Pacific, where visibility was measured in feet and every tree could hide a sniper. Japanese officers thought they understood American soldiers well. They'd studied their tactics. They knew their weaknesses, predictable, loud, dependent on heavy firepower and air support. Take those away, and Americans struggled. What they didn't understand was the teenager hiding in the mud with a rifle and a calm mind that defied his age. The kid nobody wanted. His name barely appeared in newspapers during the war. When officers first saw his enlistment papers, they laughed. He looked 16, maybe younger, baby-faced, skinny, the kind of kid who should be worrying about homework and baseball games, not combat in the deadliest theater of the war. Go home, son. Boys don't survive in places like New Guinea and the Philippines. This is where experienced men go to die. What chance does a kid like you have? But he didn't leave. He stayed quiet, learned fast, listened more than he spoke. While other soldiers boasted about what they'd do when the shooting started, or complained about the heat and the food and the endless waiting, he observed. He watched how the veterans moved, how they held their weapons, how they read the jungle, the way they looked at terrain, the way they listened to sounds most men ignored. He absorbed everything like a sponge, every drill, every patrol, every warning from the sergeants who'd seen combat. He turned it all into knowledge he could use, and when the shooting finally started, he moved like he'd been born for it. The mission was supposed to be simple. A small American unit needed to hold a jungle corridor that Japanese forces used to move supplies at night. Control the corridor, cut the supply line, protect a larger force building defenses nearby. Intelligence suggested light enemy activity, maybe a few patrols. Nothing a well-positioned squad couldn't handle. The plan depended on speed, silence, and surprise. Get in position, wait for the Japanese supply column, hit them hard and fast, disappear into the jungle before reinforcements arrived. Classic ambush tactics. But almost immediately, everything went wrong. Japanese scouts spotted movement before the Americans were fully in position. They called in a counterattack that turned the trail into a killing ground. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Tracers cut through leaves and branches like deadly fireflies in the darkness. The Americans pulled back in confusion. Flares lit the sky, turning night into a nightmarish orange glow. Men shouted orders, then screams, then nothing but gunfire and rain pounding the jungle floor. The carefully planned ambush had become chaos. Soldiers scattered, some wounded, others simply lost in the darkness. And in that chaos, the young soldier found himself separated from his unit, alone, soaked, surrounded by enemy movement on all sides. Alone in the dark, he could hear Japanese voices in every direction, calm, methodical, searching, hunting. This was the moment most men froze, the moment training either took over or failed completely, the moment that separated those who survived from those who didn't. Instead of panicking, he went still, completely still. He pressed his body into the mud, feeling the cold water seep through his uniform. He slowed his breathing until it was barely perceptible, and he listened. Japanese soldiers passed within feet of him, speaking softly, confident they'd already broken the American line. He could smell the oil on their weapons, hear the rustle of their gear, see the silhouettes moving through the rain. When the first one turned his back, the kid raised his rifle and fired once, clean, quiet. The soldier dropped, then another, then another. He didn't rush, he didn't panic. He waited between shots, calculated each angle, planned his escape route before he ever pulled the trigger. Over the next hours, he moved like a shadow, crawling through undergrowth so thick it tore at his skin, waiting in positions for what felt like eternities, firing only when he was sure of his target and his way out. When dawn came, several Japanese soldiers lay dead along the trail, and the young American slipped away without being seen, rejoining his unit as if nothing had happened. His uniform was shredded, his hands were bleeding, but his eyes were clear. That should have been the end of it. One night, one ambush gone wrong, survive and move on. But the Japanese didn't stop coming. 6 days over the next 6 days, the same trail became a battlefield again and again. Japanese forces tried to break through, convinced they faced a large, well-dug American unit with machine gun nests and heavy support. In reality, they were fighting a handful of exhausted soldiers and one teenager who refused to give ground. Each night followed the same pattern. Japanese troops moved in carefully, spreading out, searching for weak points, probing the darkness with cautious patrols. And each night, shots rang out from impossible angles. Men fell without ever seeing who fired. Panic spread. Quietly at first, whispers among the ranks. Then openly as patrols failed to return and officers argued about how many Americans were really out there. Some claimed they faced a full company. Others insisted snipers were hidden in the trees, firing from elevated positions that couldn't be reached. The kid kept count, not with pride but with focus. He marked positions in his mind, remembered faces in the muzzle flashes, adjusted his shots based on how the enemy adapted. He was learning them as they tried to learn him. He used captured weapons when his ammo ran low, switched firing spots constantly, never shooting from the same location twice. And he learned the sound of Japanese movement so well that he could tell when an attack was coming minutes before it happened. Every click of metal, every hushed command, every footfall in the mud. It all became part of a language he understood perfectly. The charge one night. They'd had enough. The Japanese charged. Dozens of soldiers rushed the trail together, yelling and firing wildly, convinced they could overwhelm whatever stood in their way through sheer force and determination. The young American waited. waited until they were close enough to see their faces in the muzzle flashes. Then he opened fire, moving as he shot, rolling to new positions, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned down. Bodies fell, screams echoed through the jungle. The charge collapsed into confusion and retreat as soldiers stumbled over their own dead in the darkness, unable to see what was killing them, only knowing that moving forward meant death. By the 6th day, Japanese commanders had seen enough. They ordered the corridor avoided entirely. Too many men were dying. Casualty reports were devastating. 87 confirmed dead in less than a week, all in the same narrow stretch of jungle, and no one could explain how. The psychological impact was worse than the tactical loss. An entire enemy force had been neutralized by what felt like ghosts, by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't fight. The aftermath. When American officers finally pieced together what had happened, they were stunned. Patrol reports listed 87 confirmed enemy dead in less than a week, all in the same area, and most of them credited to a single rifleman who hadn't even been old enough to vote back home. The officers who'd told him to go home now watched him with a mix of respect and disbelief. The kid didn't brag. He didn't celebrate. He didn't tell stories about what he'd done. He slept. Word spread through the unit anyway. The baby-faced kid who looked too young to shave had held a line that shouldn't have held. He'd forced an enemy to retreat without them ever knowing who had beaten them. He'd proven something they hadn't expected, not just about skill or courage, but about mindset. He didn't fight like a hero from a movie. He fought like someone who understood that survival came from patience, awareness, and refusing to waste a single movement. Every shot calculated, every position chosen with care, every decision made with ice-cold clarity. Years later, when veterans talked about the Pacific War, they spoke of heat that never ended, fear that never left, and nights in the jungle that felt like they'd last forever. But they also spoke of moments when one person changed everything by simply refusing to quit, by doing what needed to be done when no one else could. This was one of those moments. The legacy. The war moved on. Battles grew larger. History focused on generals and invasions and famous names: Iwo Jima, Okinawa, MacArthur's return to the Philippines. But somewhere in the jungle, a teenage soldier held a line that shouldn't have held. He forced an enemy to abandon a crucial corridor. He saved lives by taking others. And he did it all while everyone said he was too young to be there. He survived the war, grew older, lived quietly. He rarely spoke about those 6 days, because to him it wasn't about numbers or glory or proving anyone wrong. It was about doing what needed to be done when no one else could. By the end of the Pacific War, thousands of stories like his were buried under bigger headlines, forgotten in the rush to move forward, lost in the chaos of a conflict that touched every corner of the globe. But this one mattered. It mattered because it showed that war doesn't always turn on grand plans or powerful weapons or brilliant strategies. Sometimes it turns on a single decision made in the dark by someone everyone else underestimated. They said he was too young to fight. They were wrong. 87 confirmed kills in 6 days. By a teenager officers tried to send home. By a kid with a baby face who proved that age means nothing when you have the right mindset and refuse to break. The Japanese never knew who beat them. They just knew that trail cost too many lives and had to be abandoned. One corridor, 1 week, one soldier who understood that fighting smart beats fighting hard every single time. Thanks for watching this story. Quick disclaimer: this story is based on historical accounts but is presented for entertainment purposes. If you want more incredible World War II stories like this, the moments that changed everything, the soldiers who defied the odds, the battles that never made the headlines, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. We dive into the most intense, untold moments of the war every single week. And next time, We're uncovering another story where courage, luck, and pure determination collided in ways no one expected. Don't miss it.